Board of Education meeting to order. We have roll call, please.
Present.
Present.
Present. Yes.
Present.
Present. Present.
Present.
Present. If everyone would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. We will begin our meeting today with new business action on board operating procedures. I believe we all received a copy of the NASB recommended procedures, which were consensus items, and that's the document that we're working from today. Do I have a motion for approval?
Superintendent Ritz, I would move that we approve the consensus draft document with the understanding that we continue to discuss the parking lot issues in the future.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion?
I just, as the individual that was representing the appointed board members, I just wanted to say I appreciated your willingness to attend, particularly the first 30 minutes of Monday, and your willingness for your staff to work with Claire and I. I think we made a lot of progress, but I think what was key to that was the work of NASB and the recommendations that they gave us. And I would just say for the board, I know you received some information from Chris from NASB last night with respect to the parking lot issues. The recommendations that NASB are making are things that all the board members should continue to look at as we look to have clear meeting procedures that will help govern how we do our work.
And I would echo those comments. I thought we had a very robust dialogue, and this document reflects a lot of clarity into the operating procedures, and I appreciate that. Yes, Tony?
Is it understanding that the group is going to keep working on parking lot issues?
That's it's my motion as we keep working through that.
Okay. I also saw the various drafts and parking lot issues, and I appreciate everyone that worked toward that. I'd like to add to the parking lot issues the discussion on us adopting a parliamentary rule set to follow for these meetings.
Any more discussion? If these operating procedures are approved, we will begin operating with them today. All those in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, roll call.
Oh, that is true. Thank you. Call for the roll. You're okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. What was it? 9-0. Motion approved. In the spirit of working with the new operating procedures, I'm going to pass out to you a revised agenda. This new agenda reflects the order in the board operating procedures. I'll give you a moment to take a look at it, because our next item is approval of the agenda. Are there any reports or discussion items that you wish to have added to the agenda? Are there any emergency or special circumstances that we need to deal with that would take approval by the chair and 3 other members of the board?
Madam Chair, move to approve the agenda.
If you don't mind, I want to ask one more question.
Oh, okay.
Is there any reordering of the agenda that you would like to see? Sarah?
If possible, I unfortunately have to leave a little bit early today to meet some obligations back in the classroom this afternoon. I don't know if it would be possible to move one discussion item, simply the item F, common core guidance, to earlier in the meeting.
We certainly can.
Thank you.
And we'll just try to make sure that we do that make sure that we do it before you leave.
That would be great.
Okay, and if I get busy, if you would remind me, that would be
Will do.
helpful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So now I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'm not sure we need a roll call on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have approval of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You were given several meetings worth of minutes, October 2nd, November 8th, and November 13th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October 2nd?
So moved.
David moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The approval of, is there a motion to approve the November 8th minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Sarah made a motion, and BJ made a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. I do have a request for the November 13. I would like to table the minutes. I was unable to get a Microsoft Word copy to bring some changes to the board, and we also didn't allow time with that for the secretary to review them. So I would like to table the November 13 minutes, if we could,
So
until
moved.
review.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We will table the November 13th to the approval until the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is the statement of the chair. I first want to say openly that my remarks right now have nothing to do with the state of education in Indiana, but I am the very proud grandmother of a new granddaughter yesterday. Her name is Mallory Page, and she was born to my son's family out in California. And I'm actually going to get to leave on Christmas Day to go out there and see her, so see the whole family. So I'm excited about that. A couple other fun things that have happened. We have in the Department of Education a Hoosier Family of Readers tree, and we had over 1,000 students send in chain links to talk about their favorite books. And so it's a really fun tree, and we had so many that were turned in. Of course, we've made decorations throughout the office with those. And then the Girl Scout troops, Troop 119 from Shelbyville, came into my office, and we did Christmas cards to wounded veterans in Fort Knox in Kentucky. And I don't know if you know, I was a former Girl Scout all the way up through high school, and so it was very fun. I showed them my sash of badges. They were very impressed that I had that at my office. So we had a good time with that. I also wanted to say that we had the Glenwood hearing down there in Evansville, and that hearing was very well conducted, and I appreciate the board members, Troy and BJ, for attending that. And I believe, if I could ask Ann Davis, are we going to get transcripts from that meeting soon?
It was just was sent the other day from the Office of Outreach, and it was going to be shared with the board members and so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did my part.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is any board member comments and reports?
Madam Superintendent?
Yes.
Just wanted to briefly recognize and thank publicly the Richmond Community Schools Board of Trustees. They had invited me down. I'm here in the 6th Congressional District, and I had a good evening with them. We've not had a meeting since then to actually acknowledge and thank them. They were very appreciative of your message that was sent to Superintendent Ford. And so I just wanted to, again, thank the Richmond Schools. I think it's important when the board members are out and we get those opportunities to talk and meet with them. I think it's not just a goodwill gesture, but I think it's very important in terms of how we conduct our business.
I thoroughly enjoyed my visit there to Richmond. Also, they have a very robust program, Community in Schools. And so they have community liaisons in every single one of their schools. Very robust program. Any other comments?
Yes.
Dan?
Thank you. I have a couple comments. I've served on this board for 8 years now, a little more. And I wanted to recognize the board members. I've seen a couple of you on interview programs representing the board, I think, quite well. I know something, having been a teacher and a principal this time of year, the kind of time and effort professors at this time of the year reading voluminous documents and well, I have something of your schedules, and I've never seen a more committed, talented, ethical board than we have right now. I just think the public needs to know, and so very conscientious. I don't, Sarah, for instance, some of your efforts, I just don't know where you find the time, having been in the classroom. And so as compared to in my years of service, we've always had good people, but this is exceptional. On a less happy note, I do want to say something to the board. I haven't shared it. After the last meeting on a social website was a very scurrilous and ugly comment made about myself, which isn't so bad, but it was by an employee of the department. I have notified the superintendent about that, and I didn't want to put it on today's agenda because frankly we have a lot to do. But the concerns about social media in our schools with our students and principals, etc., we should be exemplars of how you use those. When we have a little more time, when we're not doing all the work, I am asking for some review of that, where it came from, what time of day, what computer. I'm looking at the ethics and the rules the state already has around this kind of behavior, what the consequences are, and how do we, in our light and work, how do we operate? What kind of example are we? I love the teaching profession, frankly. I always have. No offense to our lawyers and healthcare professionals and others. I've always held it in highest esteem, and how we behave in public is very important, and we may want to look at some policies. I want to study what the state has, and I want to be exemplars in this room and in our department. You get a few of those from outsiders, but rarely have I haven't seen it in my time from an employee of the department. So I'm going to ask, I've notified the superintendent of the issue, and I'm going to ask for some further review and effort put in this so we can get to a better place, make sure we follow policies, et cetera. So you'll be hearing more about that, and if you have any comments or ideas, I just want to do the right thing and set the right example. So thank you for your work, and we'll deal with that other issue when we have a little more time. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment, according to the new board operating procedures, public comment needs to be regarding an actual item on the agenda. And so this agenda going forward, we have new business items. Those have not changed in the copy that you received. And we also have the discussion items which have not changed regarding that. There will be no public comment on adjudications. That is exempt from public comment. So at this time, well, we did say we were going to follow the guidelines. Okay. Okay, then. We are going, since we did not inform the public that we were changing our proceedings in regards to comments, we have one person who signed up for general public comment. That would be Rick Muir.
Thank you, Superintendent Ritz and board members, for this opportunity to speak.
Before you begin,
I'm sorry?
You will have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. But thanks again for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to try and be quick, and it's very difficult to compress all you'd like to say. But basically, I want to speak to you on 2 topics. And one, Mr. Elsner, you spoke to one of the things I'd like to speak to, and that is the support, or I should say the perception that public school educators have in the state of Indiana about the way some of the board meetings have been functioning, some of the actions at the board meetings. And I'm here, my first concern to address you about is to ask this board to work with our state superintendent and let her do the job the voters elected her to do with you. The perception, whether you believe it or not, is real. The perception is that that hasn't been done in the first part of her term. And I have the opportunity as president of AFT Indiana to travel the state of Indiana. And I speak to a lot of educators from Lake Michigan to Evansville. And those people work very hard because they put their trust, as did the voters of Indiana, in an election process. Again, it's a perception, and I share the perception, that ever since that election has ended and this new state superintendent of public instruction took office, that there's been an attempt to stifle the efforts, to change, for lack of a better word, the playing field or the rules on the way they used to be, the way meetings used to be conducted, the authority of the office, the way it used to be. And I had the pleasure of working with other state superintendents, and all I guess to sum it up is to say, this state superintendent of public instruction that has the trust and the faith of public educators in this state, all over this state, deserves to have the same respect to the Department of Ed and this state superintendent of those in the past. But you know, I don't want to stand up here and just be critical. I want to offer something that I, as president of the AFT Indiana, and I, as a public educator of 42 years, would ask that you, the state board, the Department of Ed, legislators, and our governor would join an effort that was started on December the 9th. It was put out all over the country by Randy Weingarten, president of AFT National. It was kicked off by many rallies in the United States. We had efforts in Gary and Anderson, Indiana, and you're going to be hearing more about it. But I think it's pertinent to what I'm trying to say. I think it's time, certainly in Indiana, with what's taken place with the ed agenda that's been laid out by Governor Daniels and some of the other people that have supported that effort. An effort, in my opinion, and others, that has been somewhat of a demise to public education in this state, has been costly to public education in this state. And when I say costly, I mean to the children of our state, where the vast majority attend public schools, and it's been certainly devastating to our urban districts. But I want to ask you to join hands, not to debate, not to argue, but to work together to what has been titled as Reclaim the Promise. And if you'll forgive me, I want to read these points about what reclaiming the promise means at a national level, and certainly it's time in Indiana. Reclaiming the promise certainly means it's time to reclaim the promise of public education. Not as it is today or it was in the past, but as it can be. To fulfill our collective obligation to all, so that all children can succeed. Reclaiming the promise is about fighting for neighborhood public schools that are safe, welcoming places for teaching and learning. Reclaiming the promise is about ensuring that teachers and school staff are well prepared and are supported and have manageable class sizes and have time to collaborate. It's about making sure children have engaging curriculum, and I'm wrapping it up. It's also about reclaiming the promise that children and their families have access to wraparound services.
Time. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for listening. There's so much that needs to be said, but please, I just want you to know in closing that the eyes of all public educators and their families and their supporters are on this board and the actions of this board in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see that I have one more that did not indicate an actual item on the agenda. Jackie Roten.
Hello, my name is Jackie Roten, and I'm not here representing a group or anything. I'm just a concerned citizen, and I've been helping raise my niece and nephew who just recently started school. So I've started to pay attention to what's going on with the homework they bring home, things like that. I have been paying attention to what's been going on with the board, and it's kind of strange that I had no idea what the person right before me was going to say. But my comments were going to be just pretty much the opposite of his. That the board has been more than acceptable on doing things, in my view. And being so divided is hurting things. I do agree on that. Back in February of 2011, there was a problem in the state legislature where they couldn't agree on things. So a few of the legislators got mad, and they went to Illinois for a while. Basically, they were throwing a hissy fit like a 2-year-old and took their toys and went somewhere else. And that's not working together. That's immature, it's not professional. And if everyone does work together without the fighting, I think it'll be much better for the kids. And that's really all that really matters to me, because you're messing with my kid, and that's not going to fly with me very well. So that's why I started coming here. I started going to my school board, and they're just about as bad on letting people speak. You have to go through the superintendent, and if she doesn't like what you're going to talk about, you're not going to talk. You're not even allowed to go to the meeting. You can sit there, you're not allowed to say anything. So at least here I can come and say what I want and let you guys know how we feel. The only other thing I have a little handout that is actually for later on in your discussions about a email I received back during the right before the general election, and it has to do with the Common Core standards. And I will let you guys just read through what it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Proceeding with the agenda, we have the consent agenda before us. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Yes, Mr. Oliver. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Albert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent agenda is approved. On to new business. Sorry. Board operating procedures, it looks like it's on here twice. That's already been accomplished. We're ready for the approval of final placement of schools into categories and school accountability. I believe I have one speaker to address before we take action. Todd Whitlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm with North Davis Community Schools and actually have been lucky enough to appear before you before on different items. One, celebrates the success of our school, but also testimony on different items. Here today because of the appeal process and the grades that you'll be voting and approving later today. Just wanted to bring up a couple things that you may not be aware of through the process that we have to deal with on a daily basis in the school systems. And with that being said, at North Davies, we actually did 2 appeals through this process. One was on the 1% and 2% exception with the special needs children. That appeal was approved. We got feedback on that appeal that it was going to approve, even though, to be honest with you, it was not going to impact our corporation grade. What we felt is what was best for our children to go through the process and try to appeal that exceptionality. The other was the graduation rate with our high school and the grade that was assigned with it. We have submitted that appeal and we have gotten no feedback. An email came last night from Dr. Ritz to our superintendent at 6:02 p.m. saying updated information was on the Learning Connection, embargoed, and if our appeal had been approved, the data would have been changed. Our data was not changed. We don't know if our appeal was granted, as do a number of other schools, because there are, I believe you had over 150 appeals that they went through with this process. In communication with a number of those schools, some that had been identified that their grades were going to change because of percentage passing ISTEP due to computer problems, their grades would be changed. Those also have not been changed as of this morning. So we are in the dark. We have no idea what you are getting ready to approve. We have appealed these processes. In our case, we're looking at one child changes in the graduation cohort, and we go from an 89.6% passing to over 90% passing. One example of a child without names is an Amish student. Those that are familiar with the Amish community know that most of them drop out after 8th grade due to religious beliefs. We have a few that decide to continue on. Some continue through graduation, many do not. In this case, we had a young lady that decided to quit after a couple years and pursue another option, being online schooling through a school in Georgia. That person is listed on our cohort as not graduating. That one child is approved. Our graduation rate, because of our low numbers, moves up over 90%, which is our target because we have high expectations, as is the target of the state. I want you to be aware that there are many schools out there that if we weren't in our last day, you would probably have a number of principals and superintendents here relaying same stories. That we just want transparency. We want to know what you're going to approve, and we want to know what we're submitting is being looked at. The appeal that I sent for the exceptionality, I sent back over 170 pages of your information because they asked to prove how we were trained on writing the IEPs to make sure that the proper testing mechanism was assigned those people. That wasn't our material. We just regurgitated it back to you with the one paragraph of why we felt we qualified. Yet we sent multiple pages for those kids with exits interviews on the graduation cohort, and based on the data that's available on Learning Connection, we feel we must have been denied on that appeal. So like many schools out there, we ask that you really consider when you're making these final placements the background information and not just the number that's in front of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We do have several things to deal with on the A to F approval, and so I have given you an actual little sample, a little 1 through 5 order of actions to be taken on A to F grades for SBOE. And at this time, I would like for Deb Daly to come up and speak to the approval process. And we actually have to speak about 2 appeals today prior to us approving the grades. And Deb, if you would also speak to, I'm sure you probably can't speak to the specifics perhaps of the school corporation that just gave information, but to the process by which we did notify schools.
Sure.
Good morning, board members. Thanks for having me back. As Superintendent Ritz noted, we do have several items to go through. Instead of viewing all the grades as one lump sum, we do want to break this out into sections and go through each of these sections. So you have received several memos from the department last Friday, as well as a data sheet broken into several tabs. So in referencing those memos, let's start with memo number 3, which is the explanation of the Department of Education's pre-placement appeals process. So this outlines the process in which the department vetted each appeal. It was a very thorough process. We did have several steps and several reviews of each appeal. Essentially, it started with an initial review, making a determination that things had been filed properly, signatures were on the appeal, information was received in a timely manner, etc. Next, it went to 2 blind reviews, or 2 independent reviewers. Those reviewers took the time to do the appeal separately, came back together, had a group meeting to see if they had consensus. If they did not have consensus on the outcome of the appeal, it was escalated to a technical reviewer who engaged in the conversation as well. Excuse me. We also implemented an independent review process for each of the appeals. After the group appeal had consensus, the independent reviewer would be invoked to go over the appeal as well. So you can see there were actually various levels throughout the appeal process to ensure that we were consistently reviewing appeals and that we were applying the same logic across the board, and there was a very thorough process. There were several data points to review. We also established, again, if we reference the memo, let me find my copy. Excuse me, as far as training, we did go through a thorough training process, bringing department and individuals up to speed on all of our various applications where they can access data, both DOE applications as well as test vendor applications, to be able to review each data point. We also did high-step interruptions and invalidation appeals. We had a team of 6 individuals reviewing each of those appeals in a group to ensure, again, consistency. We were reviewing past history of cohorts of students, ensuring that the appeals were adequately reviewed before reaching a verdict on each appeal.
Deb, could you speak to the process in the past and how the appeal process is reviewed and communicated to schools, and why the department waits until the actual approval process to actually finalize the appeal piece?
Sure. So let's take a look at the 2012 process. In 2012, what happened was each appeal was received, reviewed by 2 independent reviewers. They would have their own status or own approval or denial, at which time it would go to a final approver or final reviewer for approval. This was typically the accountability chief to ensure consistency. Also in 2012, at the end of the process, the legal team became involved to ensure that each appeal was reviewed properly. If you remember, in 2012, this process did actually run right up to the board meeting. I believe the appeals were wrapped up the day before, or possibly 2 days before the board meeting was set. Notification was held until the board meeting. At the time of the board meeting, the notification of the appeal outcome was sent to the schools at that time. So for this year, we did want to notify the schools of their data updates prior to the board meeting, which was done through the Learning Connection application. Throughout the A through F process, data has been available to the schools for their school or corporation only through Learning Connection. It does get down to the student level information, so they can see all students that were included in their accountability. They can recreate the calculations with the data files that are presented for them. So those updates did occur last night. As noted before, it was around 5 p.m. when the updates did become available for schools to review through Learning Connection. Now this is again a soft release in that grades are not final until after board approval, so it is simply updated preliminary information available for the schools. Now, as grades are not final until after the board meeting, the policy is that we will release those official outcome letters to the schools following the board meeting. So they will receive a hard copy letter of the outcome of their appeal.
And the first order of action today is actually 2 schools discussed in the memo that you received. And we have 2 schools submitted appeals because they felt the wrong accountability model was applied to them. They were in a small high school category. In reviewing the appeal, the DOE identified that the schools did not fit into that model that was applied, but the school also did not fit into the other possible model, which was a total high school model. So since the rules don't include a model for these schools, DOE proposes you to consider 2 options. I will say at the outset, our decision here today does not change the grade of the school. It does change the calculation. So it doesn't change the grade in any way of the 2 schools that we're talking to you about. But I promised that I would have total transparency, and if we had any issues regarding school assignment into a category, that I would bring that to this board. So option 1 would be to apply the regular high school model, and you have this in your memo we sent to you. However, data would not be aggregated to reach the 30 students. These are very small schools. In fact, perhaps you might be able to explain it better than I can, Deb, that we really have 2 options we can consider. We can consider keeping them as a small school, or we can consider moving them to the high school model. It improves their point score as they wanted to have in their appeal, but it does not change their grade.
Correct. So within the rules, we have a high school model, and again, a high school model can have grades 9, 10, 11, or 12. The high school model uses all 4 data points of English language arts, math, graduation, college career readiness. We also have a small high school model, which is only utilizes English language arts and math. The difference between the 2 is in the high school model, it states that there must be 30 students available for English language arts and math. For these 2 particular schools, they do not have 30 students available in that cohort. Therefore, they do not fit in the high school model. So the programming code automatically assigns them to the small high school model. The small high school model provides the provision that if the cohort is less than 30, use previous year data to get to 30 students to be able to use English language arts and math scores. But again, the small high school provision states 1, that the school cannot have grade level 12. And 2, will only use English language arts and math scores. For these schools, they fit neither model. Obviously, they don't fit the high school model because of the minimum number of students required. They don't fit the small high school model because they do, in fact, have grade level 12. So there's 2 options that are presented on your memo. The first option represents what both of these schools put within their appeal, that they would like to use the high school model. However, note that because they do not have this 30 students available, their English language arts and math scores would in fact drop off and would not be utilized. The second option represents what the Department of Education recommends is more of an amalgamation of models, using the small high school provision to use multiple years worth of data to get to the 30 students, but also allow for the graduation and college career readiness information to be included in the calculation. Now, as Superintendent Ritz noted, for these particular schools, it does not necessarily affect their overall grade. It will affect their points. But please note that there are also 28 other schools in the state that fit into this as well. They are all being assessed at this point with the small high school model. However, they do have grade 12. They have enough students in their cohort, minimum N size of 10, to include graduation information and college and career readiness information. The 2 schools that we're presenting you with today are the 2 that have appealed this.
Madam Chair, I didn't see that memo. What schools are we talking about?
Are you okay to share that? Both of these are options charters.
Is one of the options to just keep them as small high schools?
That's also an available option that we can do, certainly, but I do feel that moving forward, this is another instance that we should address for future calculations.
Will the other, I guess, other 26 schools, since they haven't appealed, they'll remain in the category that is small high school?
We'd
correct?
also like for the board to address that as well, given that we do have this provision allowing us to update data following original board placement. We would like an opinion of whether we would allow these schools to come back later and recognize this as a data error and request a change to whatever decision is made for these two schools that have appealed.
So of the two options, the department has a recommendation as to which option it would prefer?
Yes, it would be applying the regular high school model, but the data would be aggregated in order to reach 30 students for 10th grade cohort when calculating the ESEA scores.
And that's
Yeah.
option 2 or option 1?
Two.
It's option 2.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver?
Senator Ritz, I just wanted to ask a real quick question. With the option that the department's recommending, understanding how some of the concerns I've heard, obviously from teachers and students, we talked previously on 2012, 2013 data, which is what we're talking about. They're trying to do the combination that best positions the score, produce the best grade. In this case, it's the same grade. In your recommendation, I'm assuming that your recommendation is different from what the schools are asking because it positions them or gives them the best possible consideration, given that we don't have a clear rule. Is that safe to say?
Correct.
Correct. So it would be in line with what we talked about previously in our prior board meeting when we talked about combined models. We wanted to always be right up front. Here's an issue that came about during the appeal process.
Right. I do also feel that this is in line with those previous discussions as well as far as utilizing data where it is available. Again, for these schools, they do hit the minimum end size for graduation rate as well as college career readiness. So that data is available to be used in the calculation.
Mr. Walker?
I just want to be clear about the answer to Gordon's question. Will this change be applied to the schools that did not appeal?
We do not intend to apply that to those schools for this year. Given that it is after the fact, we did not feel that that would be fair, that they do not have the opportunity to look at that information or know that that's what they were going to be assessed. However, we did also want the opinion of the board if any of these other schools do come back to us and wish to request to use this option, is that acceptable as a data error, and can we alter these grades after original placement?
And the reason I bring that up because there are other schools with this issue.
There are 28.
One I'm familiar with, Hammond Academy of Science and Technology. I'm not sure if they appealed. I encourage them to appeal because they have a similar situation where their configuration did not fit neatly into our rubric. And a few meetings ago, we voted to adjust that for the current school year, and we voted not to adjust it for the grades we're given today. This sounds very similar to that argument. If we're going to make this change here for these schools, I would recommend that we apply this to all the schools similarly situated that want to take part in it, because I know for a fact that HASC received a reduction in points because they didn't have all the way up to 12th grade. So, I mean, what's the difference? Why can't we do that for schools like HASC if we're going to do it for these schools? And the other question I had, did HASC appeal on this issue?
I'm not certain if HASC did appeal on this issue.
It's my understanding they did.
Okay, I'm not certain on that one. I definitely have to pull up the records to see if that school in particular appealed on this issue.
Because, if they did appeal on this issue, I think it's almost the same as what we're doing here, and they should be adjusted as well.
If they had appealed on this issue, I believe we probably would have lumped them together. We did bring all of the similar ones. So I'll definitely look to see if they did provide an appeal.
So, I hear a couple of things happening. I hear perhaps a motion to deal with these two, and then perhaps there might be another motion then for any other similar configurations. Mr. Oliver? Or Sarah, did you have your hand up first? Oh,
Okay, sorry. gotta get used to, I'm gonna move this mic a little bit. Okay. Sorry, Dr. Freitas. I was going to ask Superintendent Ritz if it would be possible, there's a lot of, obviously legalities tied to this in terms of due process and making sure that we honor that. I would love, if you would permit, I'd like to hear board counsel offer some legal analysis. I want to make sure I understand, since we don't have a clear rule on how to deal with this, I just kind of want to help. I want to hear from Michelle a little bit about, with regard to the options we're considering, what is your legal recommendation to the board in terms of what's in front of us? And then also, too, keeping in mind the previous speaker, I think I remember reading in the statute that once we set placements, is there a due process after that? I guess that's the other part of my question.
Right, and we dealt with that at the last meeting as well. And so I believe Molly, is Molly in the room too? I believe Molly's aware of the situation that we're speaking about too, from the CECI. So, Michelle?
Thank you for letting me speak. I did speak with council and the department. I was familiar with this issue. We actually had it last year as well. I think Deb did a great job of describing the challenge that they don't neatly fit within either. I, like her, would recommend option 2 because they do have all of the data points, and in my mind, the entire purpose of an accountability model is to use the various data that you have available. And they've appealed and asked you to use this model, so in terms of a due process concern, they're obviously not going to raise that since they have specifically requested it. And then for the other schools, the challenge would be, what we have found historically, having lived through this now twice, is that which model has applied has not usually affected the ultimate grade. It has affected the number assigned to the school. So perhaps you're a 3.0 and then you become a 3.2 with the model change, but you remain a B. But my recollection is, and it's not perfect, is that last year we went ahead and checked for all of the schools that fell within this scenario. I think we had to do it by hand, to see if anyone's grade would actually be affected based on which model. And the intention was to hold harmless the school. So if someone were to have performed better under one model or the other, then we would have notified the school and given them the option. And I think we all know they would probably opted for the model under which they performed better or wound up with a higher grade. So I don't think that there are any due process concerns. I do think it's a decision for the board. They don't fall neatly within either model. But option 2 does, it has tended to raise the number but not change the grade, and it does give effect to all of the various data points that we have available for the school. And for schools serving grade 12, it's usually important to try to see their grad rate and their CCR data.
Dr. Oliver?
Just a follow-up question real quick, Michelle. I just want to make sure, on that statute, once the board works through what rule we apply and we establish that grade, my understanding is that it's final unless there's some kind of evidence that there was a calculation error. Is there language like that, or am I reading that right when I review that section of the statute? What is the due process available to the district once we finalize grades?
So as you described, they become final once the board adopts the grades. And then there was a new statutory section added, 20-31-8-6, that says if there are any errors, or if a school appeals their final grade, and then the department shall change and we shall make it publicly available. So I think in the same way that we originally made it publicly available, which would be before the board and on the website, and I have recommended interpreting it. I think everyone's on the same page that's not a comprehensive appeal process like we just went through, but rather an identification of an error. If someone realizes that a student was included in their data that should not have been, or various other things that sometimes we learn after the fact, then they would have the option to have that corrected. And I think that's been past practice. I think the aim has always been, I've seen it under both administrations, if after the fact we realize an error was made, to correct it, but we want to make sure that it changes on the website and is publicly disseminated.
And we would bring it back to this board, and
Yes.
the department intends to follow that same procedure. You're welcome. Dr. Walker, Mr.
Michelle,
Walker.
what's your opinion if one of the other 26 schools see what we've done here today and they come back and say, we didn't appeal, but now that you all have done this, we want the same consideration? Is that permitted?
I think that
Oh,
would
yes.
constitute an error, and it would be
Yes.
worthwhile to
Most
calculate
definitely.
and see if it makes a change. So yes, I think that they would all have that option.
Most definitely. Okay. Dr., Mr. Alpert, excuse me. Oh, so sorry.
That's all right. I think we need to deal with the two that are at hand currently and let the other schools follow the due process that's provided by the law.
All right, do I have a motion? I kind of hear some consensus here. Do I have a motion for option 2 with these 2 appeals to apply the regular high school model, but data would be aggregated in order to reach 30 students for 10th grade cohort when calculating ECA scores?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have 2 seconds. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say I want this fixed for all of the schools that didn't neatly fit into our little formula, and I want it fixed for 2012. I know we took board action to fix it for this school year's grades next year, but it should be fixed for last year's for the ones we're given now. So I just want to encourage any schools that feel you fit into this model and you had the same sort of anomaly to appeal to us after this vote.
I'll go one step further, if you don't mind, Mr. Walker, and say that we'll contact those schools.
There you go.
And let them know that this was a change, and if they want to appeal that, they certainly may.
Great.
All right, let's take a roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. And I would like to add to Todd Whitlock at North Davies Community Schools that after approval of the grades, you most certainly, we're going to have more dialogue with you regarding your issue. Our next item on the A to F grades is the approval of placement of categories for all public schools. This was in tab 1 of your spreadsheet of the 2013 school grades that was sent via secured link. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brad Oliver, second by Sarah. Any discussion?
I just have a question of clarification because this is the second go-around. The mystery behind the appeal, I thought we did get that information to folks beforehand in the past. Michelle, this is round 2 for you or somebody. But it seems we left some folks in the dark as to what was happening. What's the reality and what can we do about it, or et cetera? What's the situation? Because I thought, my memory tells me, people knew what their appeal, we responded to them, and they knew before it came to the board. Did we get it? Did they get it last night? Or help me out a little bit here.
Sure. So
They
Because
got-
I've had some people ask me the question.
They got an updated data piece. So they got an update on their information.
Correct. So what's available in Learning Connection, again, not only the student information, but there's also a summary of all of their past percents, their graduation rates, the points that were assigned, and then finally the letter grade, preliminary letter grade that is assigned to their school or corporation. So they have that updated information available to them yesterday evening. Again, the letters, the actual letters of approved denial, the intent is to send those out after board placement to notify exactly what was approved, what was denied, specifically the combinations of approved and denied. Some pieces of the appeals can be approved in part and denied in part, so it's not as simple as just saying all of your information was approved
Then-
or denied.
As we work with schools, and I hear this concern, I guess, what, did we just get behind in our work, or is that by intent? Shouldn't they know in advance further and be ready to communicate? Just help me out, and I've been, I just want to know how we got in this situation. And in the future, I think we even made a commitment to that here at a board meeting. I can't remember now for certain. I'd have to go back and look at minutes. It's not necessary. Could we get folks a little better information a little earlier so they know how to communicate in their community and talk about the issues of how they want to improve, and et cetera? Any thoughts on that? Or
So the
superintendent or you? I don't care.
Right, the outcome of the appeals were actually done last Friday. So we were able to finalize all of the appeals and provide the grades to the board last Friday. So at that point...
No, I'm talking about the schools. Yeah.
Sure. So at that point, we did have to work on the learning connection portion of this to ensure that it was updated as well. Now, feeling that, again, the grades are not final until after board action, we felt that that is the appropriate time to then notify the schools of the outcome of their appeal. But we did feel absolutely that they should receive that updated information prior to the information going public at the state board.
In fact, I think Michelle just said that was what happened the year before too, that the appeal information to the schools was sent out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, that last year also the information came to the board and appeals were just finalized like right before the board meeting, and schools got their appeal information after the approval of the grades. Is that correct? Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
So this is only my third round of letter grades. Debbie might have lived through more, and we have Molly here who's lived through, 7 or 8. But last year, my recollection is we did get those letters out the day before. It was by necessity, not by design. As Debbie described, legal decided we would stick our noses in the appeal process and do a third round of review. And that had us working the entire weekend and nights up until the Tuesday before the board meeting. My recollection is that we did get the letters out to folks, but it was just the day before, and it was by necessity. I want to express, having lived through this, the appeal process is cumbersome, arduous, and all other adjectives like that. Usually everyone is working around the clock trying to get through those, and I could certainly understand it if we got behind. At the same time, I do think it's essential to try to get the information to the schools as soon as possible and before the actual board meeting.
We did.
And we did
I'm not
last year.
bringing
My
this up
recollection is the day before we sent those out.
I'm not trying to be critical. I just, in our next work schedule and timeline, I don't see any advantage of them not having it, even though you could say a day wasn't early enough either. So,
Right.
so I'm not trying to be critical, other than to say in our work schedule and timeline, it seems they should know a superintendent and principals. They have a lot of constituencies to communicate with, and unless there's a legal problem with it, I would prefer that we just look at a schedule and shoot for a better target to get information back earlier. And I know everybody's been working hard, so I'm not trying to be critical.
Yeah, in working with my staff, I insisted that they update the Learning Connection and that be given out to schools prior to today's meeting. And so that did happen. The actual letters will go out today. Is that correct?
Actually, if you don't mind, Maggie would like to address this.
Okay, Maggie.
She can provide a little more information on the letters as well.
Thank you.
Just to provide some clarification on everything that's being discussed about the release of grades to schools. The department was very wary about releasing before the board had officially placed and officially given schools what their accountability category was. And that's why we didn't feel like we had clearance to share those grades when it's unofficial still until you officially vote in place. We did, however, provide, like the superintendent and Debbie have said today, the embargo data so that schools would be prepared and be notified of what we would be presenting to you all here at the board meeting today. In moving forward, we are more than happy to work with you all in the process and the procedures of providing schools the grades ahead of time if that's what you all would like. We just didn't have that much guidance on what that was going to look like, and we tried to be fair and didn't want to overstep our boundaries in the finalization of grades. Yes, Dr. Oliver.
Oh, Dr. Oliver, excuse me.
Sorry.
Maggie, I just wanted to echo and say thank you for mentioning that, and because that speaks to the concern I've had all along, and that is we have had past practice at the department, of embargoing information out to schools. I was in central office for 6 years in 2 districts, and the reason it is critical, and I've heard this from school leaders in the field, that just as Dr. Elsner is talking about, a lot of times until the data gets out in an embargoed fashion, local districts may see something, may see an anomaly faster than what can be seen at the state level. And so I just want to be clear on that, because there was a lot of misinformation spent around why the board was insisting on getting embargoed information out to schools. And I'm glad to hear that there's apparently a change of position or change of thought on that for next year, because as it was, a lot of districts expressed anxiety over all of a sudden now we got to feel like we got to rush and get this done so we can get the grades finalized to avoid missing the January 1st deadline.
Right.
So I appreciate hearing that.
And please note, a lot of what we planned in our process was based on the board meeting where the actual process of how the appeals would look was established, where we didn't want to release grades in a way that that could be leaked and schools could get an unfair image or an inaccurate image. So that's where all of this is coming from, just for background information. And as I said, the department is more than willing to work with you on the process for next year, since this is a board process technically, and how you would like to handle the release of grades to schools.
Yes, Sarah?
Unless I misunderstood the testimony, I just wanted to clarify. In case I misunderstood the testimony. It sounded like some schools were informed one way or another about their appeal. Are there special circumstances by which some schools are told whether or not their appeal goes through and others are not?
So essentially, and I may have Debbie come up and
Sure.
explain this as well, there was a separate special education process that is at the federal level, and those are the schools that did receive notice already.
Okay.
All other issues that were dealt with are A to F. Those have not received any
So it's a
notice
separate
yet.
classification.
It's separate. I don't know if Debbie wants to add anything.
Correct. Debbie?
So the appeal process, if you will, that schools have already received information about is the 1%, 2% alternative assessment caps, and whether or not they can receive an exemption to those 1%, 2% caps. Again, this is a federal flexibility, was handled through our special education department, and it essentially establishes which corporations need to take students out of their proficiency if they have exceeded their I-STAR or IMAST caps. So those portions, again, it is a separate process. That portion has been completed and notifications have been sent out. Anything that has to do with the actual grade appeal, no notifications have been sent out at this point.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
You're welcome. Mr. Oliver?
Sorry, Superintendent Riggs, a quick question. Deb, we talked back in October, I think it was October 2nd, in the wake of the Sheldrick Brew report about, given that schools and teachers and parents are concerned about how can we know we can trust the grade. We talked about some comparative accountability. Was there anything done or related to what we discussed, that way of having two groups look at that and comparing them? I think we talked about LSA possibly running a calculation, DOE running a calculation, comparing to see if we get the same score. Can you speak to that?
Sure. We have actually done parallel calculations with LSA. They have approved our grades as well. There were a few anomalies that we did work through on those calculations, but again, we did come to consensus on all of the grades.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I want to note that Andrea Neal has now arrived. Thank you, Andrea.
Now we get down to serious.
Dan?
I want to just confirm something that what I'm hearing. A lot of the appeals were around questioning the validity of the I-STEP test. Is that correct? Most of them, no?
I wouldn't say most of them.
A number just said, and we relied on Dr. Hill, correct? Is that his name? And then the report we received from the testing company. And so were there any reversal of grades or accountability ranking based on challenging the validity of the test?
I do not believe that any of those were approved. Now, if like perhaps Michelle Walker can come speak a little more about the process about I-STEP interruptions and invalidations that we follow throughout the
I just
appeals
wanted to
process.
make that point clear, because once you serve on the board and test, it's like the professor that gives out the grades. You get a lot of appeals to the provost, so.
Well, thank you for that comment, because it does stem back to the I-STEP appeals process and the validation of the scores and the students that were deemed invalid scores due to the I-STEP interruptions.
So I just wanted
which,
to.
which serve as the basis
Yeah.
for which the grades are calculated.
And so my big thing, and I'm interested to hear this, is the ones that were appealed on that, did we accept any of those appeals? Were all those rejected? And if there were some accepted, some rejected, on what basis? I just want to make sure. Might be good for me to know, but certainly the public that's watching.
Thank you, Michelle.
So we did actually analyze all of those that were submitted due to I-STEP interruptions. We did look to see if the names of the students that they submitted on their appeal were actually part of Dr. Hill's study. We also did some analysis in terms of longitudinal data for the students they identified to look at their progress over time.
See what the variation.
Right, to see. And we actually did not approve any of those requests.
So it was consistent.
All right. Andrea?
If a school misreports its data, doesn't appeal, doesn't recognize that until after our vote today, do they still have recourse?
Could you elaborate a little more as far as, is this an incorrect data submission?
Yeah, I heard about a school. I was perplexed by the school's grade, and sounds like they misreported their number of graduates.
So there's definitely various components that go into this. I would like a legal interpretation on whether or not they can vet a full appeal process. Now, I do understand that we would be recognizing data errors.
Deb, could you also then talk about which graduation data we really are using?
That's a very good point, Superintendent Britt. So we are actually using, for the 2013 grades, the 2012 graduation rate and college and career readiness information. So there has been a period of time that has gone by, obviously, since this graduation information has been submitted to the Department of Education, as well as we reopened the graduation submission last January to allow for edits and updates to the data at that point to ensure accuracy in the 2012 graduation rate. So that's definitely a consideration when reviewing this information as well.
We have several processes in place to be sure that we have accurate data before we actually calculate the grades. And what she's speaking to is a window in which we allow schools to go in and correct graduation information so that when we do calculate the grades, they are correct.
And so what if a school fails to correct its data error?
I do feel at this point that that data is final. That is their graduation rate.
We have a motion on the table to approve the placement of categories for all public schools. This was tab 1 of the spreadsheet of the 2013 school grades that was sent via secured link. We do have a second. We've had discussion.
Is it all schools or public schools?
These are public schools. These are all public schools. Tab 1. Take a roll. Oh, Andrea?
I apologize that I was here late. So are we taking 3 separate votes?
We are, and there's a very specific reason for that, because we broke them into categories. The first 2 there's no issue to address, but the third one, we want to bring before you about the freeway accredited schools, because there's a difference as to whether those have to be publicly announced. So we're going to gather input from you regarding those schools. But the first 2 tabs, we are obligated by statute to actually release them publicly. So the first group, the first tab is the public schools, and we have a motion, a second, and discussion. I think we're ready for the vote. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The next item on the order of actions for the 8F grades, and Andrea, you have a paper at your desk, at your area, that speaks to how we're working through this, is the approval of the placement of the categories of all non-public and choice schools. This was tab 2 of the spreadsheet of the 2013 school grades that was sent via secured link. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
And a second by Troy. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
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 No. Yes.
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 Yes. The next item is the determination of public placement in a school performance and improvement category for freeway accredited schools. This is an issue that came before the department at the request of a school. I believe it started out with the request of a school in this kind of category. And so I would like for Deb to explain what a freeway school is, so that we can, a freeway accredited school, so that we can have a good conversation about this.
If you don't mind, Superintendent Ritz, I'd actually like to refer to legal since they are more well-versed in this area.
Maggie? The action on public release of the categories for non-public accredited schools. We have non-public freeway schools that are held to a different accountability metric, which is what Maggie's going to talk to you about. The accreditation type is different than that of a traditional accreditation.
Hi. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. The terms that govern a freeway school's accreditation are outlined in a very specific contract with each school. Go ahead, Maggie.
Hi, thank you. So this is just a concern, a legal concern that we had at the department, and I don't know if Michelle wants to get up and talk in a moment after we kind of address, and it's just something we thought we wanted to bring to your attention, because I think there may be some confusion in regard to how ATHREF accountability may be applied to freeway accredited non-public schools. So these are just some legal concerns that I had and we at the department had. There may be some policy issues that may also arise through this as well. If you look at the statute that governs freeway accreditation and the rule for accreditation, it seems as though freeway accreditation is almost a separate accreditation from traditional accreditation. If you look at, let's see, where do I have it? 511 IAC 6.1, 0.51. It separates out non-public schools that become freeway schools from non-public schools that are accredited. You do get accredited as a freeway school, but it's pretty much governed by the contract that you enter into. That contract is actually entered into between the board, the state board, and the school board, or the school for that particular freeway. In looking at that, we found that the contract includes different metrics for accountability based on 2% increases in attendance, graduation, and I-STEP performance. So we just had a few concerns about whether or not these schools should be publicly placed in ATHREF accountability if the statute for freeway doesn't necessarily reference and their contracts don't reference that they will be placed in an ATHREF accountability placement.
I might add that the schools would know their grades. We have to monitor their grades according to their individual contracts. Did I say that correctly, Maggie?
Well, technically the contracts or their petitions don't reference A through F. We keep them in-house so that we at the department have a way of monitoring all schools in the state. So we have calculated the grades for these schools. And these schools did have an opportunity to appeal.
Mr. Oliver.
And this, Maggie, this may be a question for you, but it may be a question for board counsel. It's a legal question because I understand the concern, and that I guess the remedy is what concerns me because we're asking the board to think about something that in the back of my mind what's going off isn't this an issue for the General Assembly to address legislatively? I mean, if the legislation currently says we have to go by the contract with the schools, that would seem like that's the parameters that the board has to operate in. We can't start, I don't think we can start legislating new statutes. So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking us to do on this because I'm not comfortable unless board counsel tells me that we're operating inside of some parameter legally that we can supersede a contract because we don't like the way the legislation reads.
Right, and actually that is my concern, and that's why I'm bringing it to you all. I'm not sure if in the past these freeway schools received grades. This is just something that in working on A through F, came across my desk, and it caused me to worry a bit. So, frankly, the reason why I'm bringing it to you is because you all are the party to the contract, and at the department, I don't think we felt comfortable making that call on whether or not to publicize. Yes.
May I ask you a specific question?
Yes, Dan?
When, over the years, when we've accepted a freeway school application and made them freeway schools, nothing in the discussion, I don't remember seeing any contract that exempted them from ultimate accountability. We just exempted them from some paperwork and rules and regulations because they were doing well. So frankly, the way I understand our contracts with them, and the spirit of it certainly was get the results. And we won't mess with you too much on the process. That was the premise of all these that we, excuse me, that I've been party to approving. So I would want to keep the grades, frankly, and keep everybody accountable and make sure if you're going to be accredited in the state of Indiana, we know where you are, and the people who decide to go there and the parents who choose it have that. And I don't ever remember exempting them from this in those discussions.
Sarah?
Does this portion of the contract vary from school to school, or is it a standard element of the contract that applies to all freeway schools?
So in review of the freeway petitions that serve as the contract, they all have the same metric for monitoring, which is what is outlined in the freeway statute, which is different from the rules of accountability that would be governed by A through F.
But it's consistent throughout the freeway schools?
Yes.
So what we're really deciding is whether we're going to publicly and formally place the freeway accredited schools today. That's really what we're deciding, what we're doing. So I guess I will move for, is there another question?
So
Andrea, sorry.
Are there two separate votes to be taken? One whether it's public, and one whether to place those schools in categories?
We can do that if you wish.
Well,
Maggie?
It didn't seem like the same action to me.
Well, I think it would be two separate actions. So you would have one action of whether or not you would vote to make the grade public for these schools. And if you are choosing to make the grade public, then we have provided the spreadsheet of those grades, and then you would vote to approve
To
those
place them in the
placements.
category. Sarah?
If we didn't go this accountability route, what would our option be for monitoring their success and their accountability throughout? What's our backup plan?
The department will monitor regardless of whether you publicly release them and put them in categories.
But does the public have any?
I mean,
So I
go
can
ahead,
speak
Maggie.
to that, actually. So there is in the statute annually on July 1st, it says, which is very specific, so I hope you're all available on July 1st, that we are supposed to review, the state board is supposed to review the content of their accountability and their monitoring. So I guess that in a form is its public monitoring based on those three metrics that they're supposed to be meeting. So there is a form, however, it's different from what the rest of the schools in Indiana are on. And I guess there's a legal piece and there's a policy piece. Do you want all of the schools in Indiana that hold any form of state accreditation to be on the same metric and that all public can see that? Or do you want to, be a little bit more on the safe side and the legal side, and the contract isn't explicit, however, we feel there's a policy concern that outweighs
Are
that.
you open to a motion?
And, well, I think Andrea was correct. We really need to vote on two things.
Well, I could make the first one.
Well, I just have a question. Why do we have the accredited freeway schools, does the statute subject them to the accountability law?
I'm sorry, I don't think I
Are they
understand.
subjected to the A to F law by statute?
So that's where I'm trying to kind of, I guess I'm maybe not
Seek our
explaining it.
guidance.
So the non-public schools technically the non-public freeway accredited technically, in my interpretation of the law, would not fall under A through F. They would fall under the accountability system that is included in their contract based on
Why
statute.
would they even have a contract if they're not subject to the 8F law?
So we have to hold a contract with them, and that is what governs their accreditation.
By statute, you have to have a
Mhm.
contract with them in order
Yes.
for them to be accredited?
The state board holds the contract, and that's
So
what.
to what end are these schools accredited in most cases? Why do they choose to be accredited?
Well, it gives them a form of state accreditation. I think traditionally, a lot of non-public schools chose freeways accreditation for participation in IHSAA.
Which is no longer required, is that correct?
Correct. But there are a lot, and for choice eligibility as well.
Okay, do we know what percentage of these, well, wouldn't they be under the non-public and choice category if they had choice?
Well, we separated them out, I believe.
We did separate those out on the tab so that you could see which ones are the freeway accredited choice versus the freeway accredited non-choice versus the state accredited choice, etc. So all of that information is available on the tabs. Just one other note about past practice. Excuse me, these freeway accredited schools have received grades in the past.
Superintendent?
Yes, Dan?
I just want to reemphasize, Andrea, that in these discussions, when we approved freeway schools, we never mentioned that they wouldn't be accountable for results, and it was never suggested that the public wouldn't know where they settled in there. We just relieved them of some regulation and processes because they were doing well, and I, for one, would just encourage the board to put them in categories and to make it public, and then we treat all of our accredited schools the same. I think it's important, and that's a risky move. Let's be a little risky today.
So kind of hearing the discussion. Yes, Tony?
I move to make freeway accountability public.
Okay, if I could, can I reword the motion if you don't mind? Is there a motion to formally place freeway accredited non-public schools and publicly release the accountability grades for non-public schools that hold freeway accreditation?
Well,
That sounds like...
I don't want to accept that as a friendly amendment, only because I want to make two motions as Andrea suggested.
Yes, so I would second Tony's.
And I was getting ready to do that. This would be the first. The second would be to actually place them in their categories. As Andrea said, we have to do two motions. You're exactly right. The first one would be to formally place I guess we did, they were combined. So let's do two separate. So exactly right. So, Mr. Walker, so you want to make a motion to publicly release accountability grades for non-public schools that hold freeway accreditation.
That's my motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And now, yes.
I'd like to vote yes.
Oh. The next motion would be the approval of the placement of categories for all freeway accredited schools, according to tab 3 in the secured link that you received. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Andrea.
Actually, my statement probably applies to all three votes that we've taken today on placement of categories. Accountability is important, but I don't think we've got this right. My concerns about Indiana's A to F system are threefold. One, are the calculations accurate? Two, are we giving grades that truly reflect the quality or character of a school building? Three, are we judging schools on the qualities we as Hoosiers value or on bureaucratic definitions of college and career readiness? Although it appears complaints around the state are fewer in number this year, schools are still questioning accuracy and transparency of the process. One school in Gary reports a 95% graduation rate, but says that has not been reflected in its grade. The head of the school says he has worked the formula himself and gets a C each time, yet the Department of Education has awarded that school a D. This is an extremely high poverty school that by all accounts is doing great things for kids. One of the most rigorous, high-achieving private schools in the state also has a D, in part due to a data reporting error, which makes me question the credibility of that process. My bigger concern about A to F is its one-size-fits-all philosophy that in the long run will greatly reduce the number of choices parents have for their children. To get an A, schools know what they have to do. Focus on reading and math and teaching to the I-STEP in lower grades. In upper grades, teach to 2 high-stakes end-of-course assessments and emphasize advanced placement or vocational tracks. In some cases, this is occurring to the exclusion of all else. What about the schools with top-rate drama departments or music programs or art classes? What about schools that teach their children Spanish, Latin, French, or German? What about schools where students master the history and meaning of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, as was just demonstrated earlier this week by Fishers High School and Brown County Junior High, where they won the state-funded We the People finals at Union Station? There is no reward in A to F for these achievements. Let's figure out what we value in our educational system first, and then develop standards, tests, and accountability systems to go along. Quoting Hillsdale College professor Terrence Moore, looking to schools only for career and college readiness, and then turning that readiness into a formula is a severe case of selling our sons and daughters short. A to F is a straitjacket that discourages the classical and liberal educations our children deserve. If we really value the principle of school choice, we will pursue an A to F formula that rewards a greater variety of school models and learning objectives for our children.
Andrea, I might comment that I do share your sentiment about finding other ways, multiple measures to look at our schools. And I think the board has taken a good step towards that direction with the new A to F model. And the panel is going to continue to have dialogue regarding that. So I do share much of your sentiment. All right, the next item. Oh, we got to vote. Sorry. We do. Yes. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No. Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. You have.
I just want to make one comment. In the future, if the board wants to contribute anything to the process, since this is a board process, we would welcome that. And I also want to thank the department because everyone worked really hard and pulled together in 3 weeks to get this done. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do the appeals. And if you have any feedback or input, please let us know.
Thank you. The next item. Next item on the agenda is A to F targets and weights for the 2013-14 school year. I believe you received a memo regarding this. And Deb, if you would go ahead and briefly address the issue.
Thank you. So you should have received a memo, excuse me, concerning recommendations for high school model for 2013-14. So pursuant to 511 IAC 6.2-6-4-D, bonus targets and weights for high school model will be reviewed annually for 2012-13, 13-14, and 14-15. So I want to break this into 2 sections. The first part is the bonus targets. Background of this, again, is the statute. The board shall establish new target percentages for the 13-14 school year. The recommendation is the DOE recommends that the bonus targets below remain as defined in 511 IAC 6.2-6-5.3 and will not be raised for the 2013-14 school year. It then proceeds to establish what those targets would be. For improvement grade 8 to 10, English language arts would remain 10.3, math would be 17.1. For improvement grades 10 to 12, English language arts would be 59.3, and math would be 62.8. So grounds for this consideration, the DOE considered the following points when making the above recommendation. First is the provisions in the rule. The rule allows targets to be reset for the improvement 10 to 12 component in the following sections. 5.3 H2C recognizes targets to be reset for improvement English language arts 10 to 12. 5.3 M2C allows for targets to be reset for improvement in math for 10 to 12. And finally, 5.3 S2B actually does not exist within the rule. We feel that this is likely a technical error in the rule, referring to 5.3 R2B, which has to do with waiver diploma targets, which do not take effect in the 13-14 school year. The rule does not address any adjusting of targets for improvement 8 to 10. It's truly only centered around 10 to 12. Second point we considered is the opportunity to meet the improvement targets. Improvement 10 to 12 uses the prior year cohort graduates for the base of students. At the time of the target setting in December, this group of students has already graduated in the May-June timeframe. There's no opportunity for the school to address or adjust curriculum to try to obtain these targets, since this information is already complete. These students, again, have already graduated and moved on. Therefore, we feel for the opportunity to actually hit these targets, we cannot adjust these targets after data is final. And the last point for consideration is the retiring of this model, knowing that 13-14 school year will likely be the last year in which this model will be used. We felt that remedying the above situations may not be the best use of time, considering this will be the last year of use.
The board did deal with this issue already, and
Correct.
then we said we were going to be bringing it back for this next year to approve these targets. So do I have a motion?
Superintendent Ritz?
Yes.
I would move to approve that we retain the targets as was described by Deb.
Do we have a second? Second by BJ. Any discussion?
I
Andrea?
don't know if this is a discussion or a question, but what was the rationale for increasing the college and career readiness weight from 15 to 20%?
We actually have that in the second section under weights.
We haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh.
We're in the first part on the bonus targets with the recommendation
Okay, gotcha.
for the, yes. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Our second issue is that the Department of Education is recommending that college and career readiness weight increase by 5%, and ELA and math weights increase by 2.5% each. And Deb, if you could give us the rationale for that.
Sure, and I apologize for not providing more information on this background. However, it is actually specified within the rule that the college career readiness weight would increase by at least 5% each year, and decrease the English language arts and math equal to that increase in equal increments.
And
5% was the increase last year as well, so we stuck with the additional 5% for this year, and then decreased English language arts and math in response to that.
And the high schools are aware of that.
Oh, but, do you know why?
I'm sorry?
Why was that decision made?
It's part of the rule that the college career readiness will increase until it reaches 30%.
It's part of the current A to F model rule. Tony?
Madam Chair, if I could address our colleague's question. When we were first addressing A to F model 2 years ago now or so, it was my feeling that I would argue at the time that it shouldn't be just based on standardized testing scores, and that we needed to get more further into industry certified programs and giving more weight to that, giving more weight to dual credit curriculum, so it's not just based on testing scores. So the way it got sort of compromised in was with each year would increase up to that percentage.
Thank you. So the motion before us would be that the DOE recommends that the college and career readiness weight increase by 5% and ELA and math weight decrease by 2.5% each. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is the resolution regarding national assessment of educational progress. The Department of Education prepared this resolution, and it was shared by B.J. Watts, who had requested it. B.J., do you want to make the motion?
If I could make a brief comment before
You may.
I do. I think we spend so much time here, and it's a noble cause, trying to fix problems and ensure that things don't arise, that we don't take enough time to recognize successes. We have a lot of really talented people working really, really hard in a lot of schools, and which is evidenced by our success on the MAPE scores, I believe. The quote from Marnie Duncan was that Indiana knocked it out of the park. So while I don't think we ever settled that we've gotten it right, I think that we have to understand that we're moving in the right direction and that things are going well, and kudos to those teachers and those students that work hard every single day. And I just wanted to formally, with the Department of Education, we wanted to formally recognize that, hey, we see what you're doing, and good job, because you don't hear it nearly often enough.
Would you like to make the motion?
Make the motion, and now I'll comment.
Make the motion?
So I would make a motion that we approve the resolution regarding the national assessment for educational progress.
Do I have a second? Discussion?
And
Dan?
I don't know, thank you. I don't know, BJ, if we want to read through it all. I want to make sure it's published, et cetera, and maybe we do read through it here today. But I want to echo what you say, and I also, it's very important to have it out in the public square. Call it reform, call it continuous improvement, school improvement. It's very hard work. People have to have a courageous, creative, well-researched, dedicated, long-term effort. These kind of things do not happen by accident. I also would say it's very important that people say everything's fine, just leave it alone. In the world that we live in and the broadening demands that are expected, and that could be social concerns, economic concerns, cultural concerns, the value of education gets higher every day, the challenges are bigger, and when you achieve results like this, it says it's people committed to new creativity, new innovation, very hard work. And we probably spend 80-90% of our time working on problems and issues here, and we probably ought to reverse it, celebrate the successes here. So I appreciate you working with the department to put this together. It should not be lost on the public. This is a major accomplishment, and it didn't happen by accident. So I want to affirm this and make it clear, and any items you want to highlight on that, I think would be good for the record.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item is proposed revisions to state-approved course titles that go into effect for the 2014 school year. We do this annually. You received a memo outlining all of the various courses. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the 2014-15 ISTEP and iRead testing dates. And I would also revise that to say it includes some 2013-14 information as well. Michelle Walker, Department of Assessment, if you would address us, please.
Thank you, Superintendent Ritz, members of the board. There is an updated memo, and I believe it went to you yesterday. And before I get into that, I did want to talk a little bit about the statewide readiness test that we will have in January. On the 28th of January, we set aside an hour and asked each school to actually utilize the machines they plan to use for online testing, to actually stress the system to be sure that everything is working properly. So I just want to let you know about that and be glad to report back to you in February about the results of that particular statewide readiness test. Two of the things that are in the memo, one is transitioning to college and career readiness assessments, and the other is looking at proposed dates for your approval. Wanted to make you aware of the fact that we are transitioning, obviously, to college and career readiness, and one of those pieces of transition is having an opportunity for schools to actually participate in what's called the Core Link item bank of assessment items, where we will actually give students the chance to do technology-enhanced items, where we're looking at college and career readiness skills that are not already included within Indiana's academic standards or the Common Core. That actually will take place this spring, and we will be able to utilize that item bank to build an operational test the following year, which I'd be glad to speak about today or in the future. So one of the things I included here is just kind of a background information. It is what's called a matrix sample test. So every student will just take one portion of the items, and including instructions, it would be about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes for math and about 30 to 40 minutes for English language arts. And that would actually occur after the multiple choice portion of ISTEP is administered.
Question?
Yeah.
Did all schools are going to participate?
It's actually not a voluntary option. It would be a requirement so that we can actually get statistics on those items to build a form.
Would you talk about the purpose of doing this
Sure.
in relation to the next year's test?
Absolutely. So one of the things we'll be looking at in just a few moments are the dates for spring 15, which will be here before we know it. And so one of our responsibilities is actually, as you well know, to continue administering ISTEP for one more year, but also to prepare and administer college and career readiness assessments. And so one of the things that we've been working on is how can we actually do both. And so we obviously need a set of items that we can utilize for college and career readiness. So this spring, when we administer those Core Link items, we can gather the statistics that we need on those items and use those to build a form that we can use for our college and career readiness piece. Actually, it's kind of a dual piece where part of ISTEP actually does measure, obviously, the Common Core, which is our current standards, and then looking forward at whatever our standards might be as of next spring, and then using that information and the data from both our items and Core Link items to build a form for spring 15.
And if you could really talk perhaps more specifically on what are college and career readiness types of questions.
Sure. And I think there was another question too.
Yeah, I'll get to him.
So college and career readiness, actually, when it comes to assessment, there's really two things to think about. The first one is that the content actually needs to obviously be aligned to the standards. And so right now, as you well know, we're going through a review of those standards to determine what Indiana standards will be for the future. So right now we're working on blueprints based on what we currently do, and we'll be ready to quickly make any changes that are needed to make sure that the assessment in 15 aligns to the standards that are adopted by July 1, actually, of 2014. So the other piece is really what is the rigor like of those items, and how do we actually assess some of those things that we maybe currently aren't able to assess. And that's really where the technology-enhanced items come into play. And it's actually something that Superintendent Ritz asked if I could bring you some samples in the next couple of months. And I'd be glad to do that and share with you an example of some of the items that are ELA and some that are math that are technology-enhanced. Drag and drop and other things that can be done on the computer. But more importantly, what are we assessing in terms of student knowledge and skills with those items?
It's actually engaging the students more in the
Much more
actual
so.
problem-solving process and not just a
Right.
multiple-choice answer. Mr. Walker?
What percentage of the ISTEP currently reflect Common Core standards?
That is a great question. My staff has analyzed that, and I don't have it with me. But let me get that information to Superintendent Ritz and get it to the board.
Because I get some differing of thoughts on this, but right now, current Indiana standards are Common Core, right?
Yes, it's a very small percentage of our current items that are not related to college and career readiness. We call them the dangling indicators, or you might have heard me talking a couple months ago about those additional indicators that are something we require students to know and be able to do for the current ISTEP, if you will, but that would disappear with college and career readiness. So
But the
I
majority-
want to say it's about 90%, but I don't want to be misquoted.
What you also need to keep in mind is that when the crosswalk was done between our previous standards and the Common Core, there was that kind of overlap. So we've been working with that same assessment and not having to modify it in any way.
And we've talked about instructional guidance at the board meetings before, and really what we try to do is be transparent with teachers so that they fully understand what they do need to be held accountable for in terms of student learning.
Do we have any, I don't know, a collaboration or anything with ACT or College Board? I mean, eventually our kids that are going to go on to college are going to have to perform well on ACT and SAT. ACT, as I understand it, has already significantly moved toward aligning with Common Core, and SAT is in the process of doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing anything to now for the kids that are taking ISTEP to make sure that they're sort of on track to be aligned with ACT and SAT?
So another interesting question, because we actually did a study about 1.5 years ago with both ACT and SAT and found that they were not actually aligned to the Common Core. And so we're actually looking again at what those assessments might look like moving forward. But I think obviously the whole college and career readiness, whatever Indiana deems are our standards moving forward after July 1 of 14, would be in our expectation preparing students for college and career readiness at all levels.
So where are we on finding a test to sort of an assessment test post-ISTEP?
So one of the things we have to know is which standards are we actually going to be measuring and providing instruction on. And so what we're doing right now is obviously this spring of 14 is our current ISTEP test and a pilot of additional college and career readiness items that can be used in the future. Then spring of 15, according to 1427, we are required to administer ISTEP. So we'll actually have kind of a dual purpose for that particular season. One is to be sure that we're measuring ISTEP in terms of our current standards, and the other is to make sure that we are measuring those college and career readiness standards that we do adopt as a state as of July 1 of 2014. Following that is really, I think, what you're asking. So when spring 16 rolls around and we're fully implementing college and career ready assessments, how do we get there? And we actually get there as soon as we know what standards are going to be adopted by our state, and then we can enter into an RFP to look for an assessment.
And just one last question, Madam Chair. Is it possible to use an adaptive assessment?
Oh, sure. Any other questions on transitioning assessment before I jump to dates?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just 2 quick dates for this school year. This board actually approved the dates for 2013-14 quite some time ago, over a year ago. But we do want to add these additional Common Core, college and career readiness items from the CoreLink item bank. And that's the first one that you see at the bottom of this page. It's adding an additional week. And actually, we started this window on the 5th of May, so that if any schools are finished with multiple choice, they can certainly move right into the CoreLink item administration. So we've given them a pretty broad window there. Also, this board establishes the summer dates for IREAD 3 at this time for this particular school year for 2013-14. On the following page...
Question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Oliver?
And I apologize. Sometimes when you're... Sorry, thank you. Sorry about that. I need to ask a question about CoreLink because I don't have the history on this, and
Sure.
it came up once before, Michelle, so I apologize. I just want to make sure I get in the head because
No problem.
my concern may not be sure about everybody, but I'm concerned about CoreLink, but when did the board actually agree that that would expand? Because doesn't it expand the scope of the testing? I mean, does that add an additional test when we're talking about adding CoreLink and adding this to the test window?
Actually, what we're doing is adding items that we don't currently have in our ISTEP item bank that would be in the college and career readiness arena. When we move to a full college and career readiness assessment, as Mr. Walker has asked, we would go through an RFP process, and the board would actually work with us to select a vendor for that full-fledged college and career readiness assessment. And that would be in spring of 16.
That bank has been developed for quite some time under the department, a couple of years.
Right.
And
our staff has reviewed the items and made changes, made them an Indiana version of those items.
It's not a new test, it's a question bank.
I guess what I'm wrestling with in the back of my mind, 1427 is fresh in my mind, and my understanding is that if I read it, it pauses everything. Would it not pause CoreLink as well?
CoreLink is actually our transition solution to a federal requirement that we were reminded about even yesterday, making sure that we are actually assessing college and career readiness. And we have been working to determine what is the best way for Indiana to use 2014-15 as the transition to meet the requirements of 1427 to finish out ISTEP as it currently exists, and to begin the process of the college and career readiness piece that is a requirement that we will actually have our new standards for as of July 1 of 2014. But certainly the board, and I look forward to working with all of you on what would assessment look like in the future when it is all college and career readiness based on whatever Indiana's standards are.
This is Indiana's way of transitioning to having that rigor in 15-16. We have to have our students prepared for the types of questions that they're going to have in 15-16, and this has been the plan all along to transition into that.
As Superintendent Ritz actually had the pleasure of sharing that information with the Legislative Study Committee in September about the transitioning. So this is a little bit more of an update for the board.
Madam Superintendent?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I want to ask a follow-up question. I just want to make sure, because we're talking about testing dates here. Are we going to be voting today on testing dates, or are we voting, is there even a discussion or vote even on this CoreLink? I just want to make sure I understand, because if I'm hearing this right, historically this was already set in motion. But legally I'm struggling with how does that fit with what we had passed this past year?
So I'm not an attorney, so I probably need to let an attorney answer that part of it. But what I would say is that we bring the dates to the board. We try to actually set dates multiple years in advance. Right now that's not possible for obvious reasons. But we could just add those dates, but we really feel like we want the board involved. And so what we're proposing is for you to consider and approve the dates for the CoreLink window, and then as well as IRE3 summer, and then we'll talk in a moment about next year.
Let me clarify. I asked for this to be on here. We did, the department already has the time frame established in which we could give the CoreLink questions, because it's during the same ISTEP window. But I asked that everybody be clear that we were adding additional questions to the actual exams piece this year, so that there's total transparency in what it is that we're going to be doing. So I actually requested that this be on here to make sure that happens.
Is it possible, and I'm not disagreeing with that, I just want to make sure I understand the legalities that I'm thinking about. Is it possible to ask my question of the board council just to understand how that fits with 1427?
Most definitely.
I'd love to hear Michelle weigh in, because I want to make sure
And while
I
she's
understand
coming
this.
up, I think to give you a little history, we actually were scheduled to administer the CoreLink in spring of 13.
Yes.
And when the legislature went to pause on the standards, we pulled that and withheld it for a year so that we could wait until we know more.
And Michelle, just so I can restate, I just want to make sure I understand how what we're talking about squares with language that I'm thinking about that's in 1427 around the pause.
Yeah, so, and I think that Michelle did a good job of describing that we are in a difficult position, I would argue. The language of 1427 is pretty specific that we are to administer the ISTEP, and 1415. At the same time, we know that we are changing an assessment, and in order to change an assessment, there are lots of pieces involved, including having the opportunity to test the items. We also know that we are changing standards. So I guess I'm somewhat straddling your question and using wishy-washy language on purpose, because I don't have a clear answer. I think that the 100% true to the language of 1420 is to administer ISTEP.
But does that just mean test items and that they could look differently with the iStep name? And I think that we can interpret it that way. And it's still CTV, and that's what they're doing. And I think that that's the most reasonable interpretation to allow us to move forward to adopting a new assessment and adopting new standards. And I've been somewhat consistent with this. I think that so long as it's iStep and we haven't moved to, say, a Smarter Balanced or a PARC, and we're working with CTV and iStep, there is some flexibility about what those questions, test items themselves look like.
I would also add that in our flexibility waiver with the federal government, it does speak to us having a college and career readiness test in 14-15 that is a pilot, that we're doing something with college and career readiness, and that was the plan all along. So I just add that little caveat in there as well. Andrea?
I guess I'd like to challenge the assumption underlying all this conversation that college and career readiness standards are somehow more rigorous. Is there a study, is there data to corroborate this notion that college and career ready equals more rigorous? And if so, I'd like a copy of it.
So I don't want to steal thunder from another presentation that's coming up about our review of standards and looking actually at Indiana's current standards as Common Core and previous 2009 as academic standards. So if it's okay, I would like to kind of table your question until we actually discuss that item, as someone else is presenting. I'd be glad to address it.
All right, so the motion before us. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know
You're
if you
talking
want to
about
vote
the
on them
dates.
separately or if we can do them all as one.
I think we could approve them all as one.
So let me just say just a couple of things about the last table.
2014-15?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 2014-15 windows, they are comparable dates to what schools have been doing for the last 6 years. But you'll see the iStep Applied Skills. You'll notice that with the iStep Multiple Choice, we did indicate the college and career readiness transition. And then we still have some schools who might need to give a paper pencil test. And then I read 3 spring and summer. As I was mentioning a little bit earlier on, we tried to give schools multiple years advance notice of the dates. Right now, we'll have to do it a year at a time. But once we enter into our new RFP and select a vendor for college and career readiness standards as adopted by Indiana, we'll be able to go back to our pattern of giving 4 or 5 years notice of those dates. So hopefully after you approve today, then I will actually send those dates right away out to the field so they'll have them for 14-15. Many schools like to create their calendar of dates in advance. The other dates that I will bring to you a little bit later would be those for the ECAs, and that's something that we're still working on right now. But as soon as those are available, I will present those to you.
Do I have a motion to approve the dates for assessments?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion?
I guess
Andrea?
I continue to not understand why we're bothering with CoreLink. It seems to me we ought to just put that off.
So I think maybe the short answer to the question is that we also want to give teachers and students an opportunity to experience technology-enhanced items, which we currently don't have as part of Indiana's iStep program. And that's a really critical piece because there are many skills and knowledge pieces that we can't assess right now because we aren't utilizing that technology-enhanced type of item. We have multiple choice items, obviously, online, but we really don't have the deeper level of, well, we do have deep level items, but we really can't get at those things that are as interactive as we'd like them to be, as Superintendent Ritz was explaining. So they're more engaging for students, and we really, instead of moving right to an assessment that has some stakes attached to it, we really wanted to give teachers and students a year in advance time to explore with those items, give them access. There's a practice test, there's an experience opportunity. So that's another reason why we really wanted to try to help the field transition, and it's more of a fairness issue. You're welcome.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No. Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The next item before us is the resolution regarding the adoption of academic standards. And in having conversation with Mr. Oliver, we have had conversation at the Department of Education regarding the process by which the resolution itself might actually be enacted. But prior to that, we do have some members from the general public who wish to speak on the topic of Common Core. And so we will... Oh, did I skip something? Oh, I did. Thank you, Sarah. Backing up. I put a check mark where I shouldn't have put a check mark. We have proposed rule language 1003. Michelle McGowan, you want to speak to the language? You have seen this language before. There have been a few revisions as a result of conversation and the last board meeting that we dealt with this topic. Michelle?
Yes, so if you all recall, in September we passed an emergency rule to implement 1003, which is the choice scholarship, the special education piece. And now we are bringing to you proposed permanent rule language. We did have a meeting with stakeholders. All of the folks who had been involved in the drafting process over the summer came back, and we had a meeting including Becky Bowman, the Director of Special Education for the department. All of the stakeholders have agreed with the language you have before you. It is nearly identical to the emergency rule language, but there are two changes, and if you have the memo in front of you, I bulleted those, but I'll just remind you of them quickly. Section 4 was added, new language, and this is to reflect that it's only a requirement the choice scholarship student selected the choice school as the special education provider in the subsequent year. And before that would not have been applicable because it was year one and they could not have made that selection. And then the second change is revise section 11 to reflect that the assurance requirement, prior we had a hard date, and now we thought that it made sense to align that when any other assurances are provided to the department, which is really the application process.
We have a motion to approve the proposed rule language for HEA 1003. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Now, the next item is resolution regarding the adoption of academic standards, and we have some members of the public who would like to address Common Core. Mary Black. Is Mary Black present? Mary Black?
I had hoped to address you about my concerns about Common Core.
Yes, correct.
I'm sorry, okay.
No problem. Would you use the microphone, please, and you can push it down for yourself. There you go. Thank you.
I have several concerns about Common Core, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to address you on those. My first concern about Common Core is that it actually violates 3 federal statutes. Federal statutes indicate that the Department of Education cannot direct, control, or supervise curriculum. If 2 attorneys affiliated with the Department of Education have actually expressed publicly their concern that Common Core did violate those. That is in a document from the American, the Principles Project and the Pioneer Institute. I'm happy to supply that to you. My second concern is, as a teacher for 40 years, the teaching methods in Common Core are in my opinion, and I have seen the effects of the implementation of Common Core over the period of 40 years. It isn't something that is brand new. It's very robotic. Robotic in the sense that the children are asked to feed back their opinions right from the books that are supplied. Sadly, we are told, and I believe misled, that the state of Indiana will have a say in the curriculum. I am, in my role as Student Development Director for Freedom Project Education, I speak with people all over the entire country. I am here to tell you that I receive probably 10 to 12 phone calls per day from parents and teachers in the state of New York and California. Those are the states I hear from most commonly, where Common Core is clamping down and it's solidly entrenched. There is no latitude of choice in the school districts. There is no tolerance. The curriculum is dictated. That to me is a problem in the teaching method. Another problem is a concern about the standards being appropriate for early childhood. There is a statement that was signed by 500 early childhood educators indicating, carefully documenting their concerns. My last and concern about Common Core is the fact that there was no public scrutiny of these before they were implemented. Unless I have my facts wrong, the final writing of the Common Core standards was available in June of 2010. In August of 2010, they were signed by Dr. Tony Bennett for implementation in Indiana, and I do believe in an effort to receive federal funds, Race to the Top money. Schools aren't in session, teachers are not available, there was no public scrutiny, and I think that is an injustice to those. We are the taxpayers, and we are supporting the schools, and we should have had a say. Thank you very much for your time and opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Next, we have Valerie Swack.
Good morning, and congratulations on your new grandchild. That's so
Thank you.
exciting. As you said, my name is Valerie Swack, and I live in Zionsville. I have 3 children who are school age, and they did go to the Zionsville schools. And I'm here to talk a little bit about Common Core and some of my thoughts on it, and you can actually see someone who on a daily basis is dealing with my children, and as all of you and all of us, we love our children. I first became familiar with Common Core last year when my second grader's math book had Common Core standards on the front. I have a master's degree, my husband has a doctorate degree, and the two of us could not figure out all of the hoops that they were making our second grader jump through to learn fundamental math skills. It was crazy. But actually, I'm not here to talk about the minutia. That stuff's the minutia of Common Core. My concerns are on a little bit higher level. I have 4 main concerns I'd like to share with you today. And the first is, your Common Core, it's just quietly being implemented, and it's such a big thing and nobody knows about it. And I'll give you an example. This very year, I asked 2 of our school board members in Zionsville, can you tell me about Common Core? Because I was concerned with what I saw. They didn't know a thing about it, and we had already implemented it in K through 2. That was shocking to me, that my 2 school board members that had been on the school board for a while, they had to ask our superintendent about what Common Core was. And then I also went to a meeting where there were 20 other parents with school-aged children. None of them had any idea about Common Core. My point in bringing this up is, if it has been so publicly vetted, and it is so fantastic, why don't at least the school board members know about it? Because there are elected local representatives that should be in the know of the best practices. The second thing that is a concern of mine with Common Core is, in my opinion, Common Core, it's not what America is all about. America, this is a land of innovation that we live. It's a land of innovation in both business and in education. And America is the land of the best idea wins. It's the land of choice. And in my opinion, Common Core not only takes away innovation by making it a one-size-fits-all, but Common Core flat out forces on both educators and parents what someone in Washington or wherever they're coming up with these standards thinks is best for education. And so, just hypothetically, what if a parent has other ideas for what they think is best for their children? Common Core takes away this fundamental American principle of choice. And the third thing is Common Core lowers Indiana standards. You all have done a phenomenal job over the course of over the years of what you've been doing. We have phenomenal standards. I'm a product of Indiana education. My husband is a product of Indiana education. And when we made the decision to come back here from Chicago after graduate school, I knew that I was getting a great school system. And that's why we chose Indiana to raise our family. And then now that my children are of school age, I feel like the rug, to be honest, has been pulled out from underneath me. And the fourth thing, I think Common Core is a high-stakes gamble. It's never been tried anywhere, and it's certainly never been tried on such a massive scale. And no one can argue that what you're doing in education, it is of the utmost importance. You have all been given a yeoman's job, what you all have to accomplish, and my hat's off to you for doing what you do. But that underscores education is so important. So why are we tying our children's education to something that is clearly so speculative? If it's so wonderful, try Common Core in a test market, study it, you research it, you benchmark it, and then let the facts on the outcomes be the judge of its merits. But honestly, until this is done, I'm not willing to have my children be guinea pigs in the latest educational fad. And unfortunately, it was with great sadness I did take my children out of the public education because of Common Core. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I urge you, let's be Hoosiers together and rely on Hoosier ingenuity. Let's figure out how to crack this educational nut together. We don't need Common Core state standards. We just need Hoosier ingenuity. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Michelle Peters.
Hello, thank you for having me here today and allowing me time to speak. My name again is Michelle Peters. I'm the mother of 3 children. My children currently attend a Northside Catholic school. First of all, I can tell you that it's not very easy for a mom to find a couple of extra hours this morning when this is the very last shopping day that we have before our kids are home from school. But despite the many things that I should be doing today, I've cleared my calendar because I feel that it is very important to be a flesh and blood reminder of a mom of 3 who is seeing these things come home. I want to stand before this board and say that the deficiencies in Common Core are not merely an abstraction to be viewed from the ivory tower of state governance. I first became aware of Common Core when I began to notice the poorly worded worksheets and the very confusing math papers coming home. I, too, am college educated. My husband is college educated, and we are scratching our heads trying to understand how to explain math to our 2nd grade student. My children were at a premier magnet school, the Center for Inquiry, CFI, at the time that I first discovered and saw Common Core coming home. My husband and I decided to move them to a Catholic school where I'm very sad to say that I found that all of the Catholic schools seem to be marching in lockstep with the public schools down this path of what I call, quite honestly, mediocrity. And if there is a silver lining to the cloud hanging over our nation's schools right now, what I'm seeing and what I'm glad to see is that hundreds of moms like me are becoming incredibly engaged in what's going on in the classroom and what's coming home and how our children are being educated. We are now awake and we are fully engaged and we are intently reviewing what our children are being taught, and I, for one, am incredibly concerned. We are informed and we are aware. We have studied this issue and we have examined the fuzzy math papers and the soulless paragraphs in our children's Common Core readers. We have crossed party lines in support of a state superintendent in the hopes that an educator would side with children and parents and reject the corporate interests so nakedly visible in the Common Core juggernaut. And so I'm here to look you all in the eye and urge you to make a fresh start for Indiana's children. Please do not simply tweak and reword these deficient standards and slap the words Indiana State Standards at the top of each page. Start fresh and look to the best and the brightest to give Indiana's children the world-class foundation they need. Let's be leaders, not followers. Our children deserve better. Reject Common Core and make Indiana's education truly exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Sherby. John Sherby.
Thanks for having me here today. Ladies and gentlemen of the State Board of Education, my name is John Sherby, and I'm the father of 4 children. I'm here today because I believe parental voices are essential to education. The testimony before the Legislative Study Commission this past year has amply demonstrated that Common Core is mediocre at best. My own observations have borne this out. When our Blue Ribbon School adopted Common Core line textbooks in an attempt to get ahead of the curve, the clarity and quality of the textbooks and the homework worksheets dropped precipitously overnight. Sadly, discussions with teachers and administrators revealed that they are focused on the measurement of their performance related to the attended standardized tests and therefore reluctant to deviate from the dictates of this poorly conceived set of standards. Our children suffer as a result. It is glaringly obvious that the vast majority of Common Core proponents speak because they stand to gain financially. I urge you to take the side of parents whose only objective is educational excellence. Stand against textbook companies and testing consortia who seek to profit from creating the newest thing in education at the expense of our children. Reject the Common Core. Raise the bar. Remove the specter of national standardized tests driving what is done in the classroom. Lift the yoke of mediocrity from our teachers' backs. Relieve our children from the ridiculous idea that Common Core is in some way rigorous. Indiana should strive for excellence in education by looking to the highest achieving countries in the world and to the highest achieving states in our own country to set our educational standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, with your permission, we'll go ahead and talk about the update for the standards review process currently, and then we will head into your motion. Is that okay? That will be fine. Danielle Shockey, Deputy Superintendent.
We've been working together and I've
Oh. Can everybody see the screen? And we could send this out later to the board?
Absolutely, we
Okay.
can. So, like Brad mentioned, we have been working together as recently as yesterday, so it's been a collaborative effort between himself, staff at the Department of Education, and staff at CC. So for that, we've been very thankful to be able to come together on this process. I want to go ahead and review for you the steps that we've already taken at the Department of Education through the review of the current state standards. And I guess I want to point out a few things. There are levels of teams that have been assembled, and the first team has been the Technical Review Committee, which has been made up of English and Language Arts and Mathematic educators and curriculum directors. In the blue boxes below, I've tried to illustrate what it is they have been reviewing and providing comment on. They have been reviewing the current Indiana academic standards, which are the Common Core. They were also reviewing the 2009-2008 Indiana academic standards of math and language arts, in some cases which were consumed, if you will, within the Common Core, and some cases they were left as danglers for teachers to teach for alignment to assessment. So they've really been analyzing and providing comment on 3 different sets of standards. The second phase, which is in progress currently, which is the advisory committee level. This is a group of educators, higher education, and community representation. They were looking at the 3 things I just described that the first group looked at, as well as the comment from the technical teams. The phase 3, which we are beginning to engage in, is the next level of review, which would be the College and Career Ready panel. This group is made up of higher education, career, and business. They also will be broken into English language arts bands. They will do the same thing I described, but they will add on the work of the advisory team. So everybody is looking at all the sets of standards, the current Common Core, the old Indiana academic that were subsumed, and then those that were not subsumed. We had proposed a 4th phase. This proposal I bring forth today is option 1. This was before we had a chance to collaborate with CC staff and Dr. Oliver yesterday. This was actually shared with Senator Bosmas and Long, so I do want to bring this forth because we did publicly bring this as an option. That as a phase 4 of our work, we would take the body of standards and all the comments, and that would be after the period of public comment and public review, to a national board of experts. And so these are some of the people we have reached out to. We really turned to the Center for Standards and Assessment Improvement, and they have recommended this, group of people. Some obviously have some bias, some have all done work around review standards. So it was ACT, College Board, National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is NAEP, associated with Achieve, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, Teachers of English Language Arts, the Center for Statistics, which is the representing PISA exam, the Education Commission of the States, specifically around their College and Career Ready Blueprint project, Fordham, and again, like I mentioned, the Center for Standards and Assessment Improvement. So that is an option. However, we now have thought maybe a little bit differently around that. But the goal of that option would be to provide analysis of the Indiana process and product to make sure that Indiana has come to have a final set of Indiana standards which take into consideration all bodies of work and bring forth the best to the Education Roundtable and ultimately the State Board of Education. Since we met yesterday, this is a second option that we actually now would hope that you would see value in and actually agree with us that this may be the route we take. Rather than having the national panel serve as its own entity in silo, that we would actually bring together what we would call a final review panel, which would be a cross-representation of the technical team members, the advisory team members, the college and career ready members, and national experts. The size of this group, that's obviously something we need to work out. Dr. Oliver is suggesting that maybe the best kind of work can be done if this group is small. So we were thinking, possibly 2 or 3 of each of the first 3 groups, and then the national group maybe 1 or 2. And then this group would do something a little bit different. This group would take into consideration not only the current Indiana Academic Common Core and the Indiana Academic Math of 2009 and the 2008 English Language Arts, but rather take it back to the fundamental underlying standards that are from the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics and Language Arts. So they would actually do a rating process, maybe a plus, minus, and a 0 type system, where they would rate all of the layers. And then they would come to a final conclusion, which is the far right column, which would be the proposed Indiana College and Career Ready standards. And that would come forth for public comment and state board hearings that would be held in approximately February, March, is what we were thinking. And I guess I want to pause here and invite anybody who was involved in our collaboration, Dr. Oliver, Michelle Walker, Molly, Claire from the CC staff. At this point, if they want to add anything that I haven't represented, I do want to add just 1, 2 final comments. One other addition we are making is between this phase we're in now and before we get to the phase 3 of bringing together the Indiana College and Career Ready panel, which again is college, career, business, that we would engage with the DWD, the CHE, the State Board, and the Department of Education to define what is Indiana's definition of college and career ready, and then also design the format for which the College and Career Ready panel would use to review the bodies of work from the advisory and the tech team. So they would kind of create the format. All of this change, if you will, in the phases, this was the original timeline we gave you. There are adjustments to the timeline, but ultimately the end goal is the same, to take everything each month to the roundtable starting in January, to the State Board for updates, and then ultimately in April to this body for final approval from the Education Roundtable recommendation, so this could be rolled out to the field by May, so they have time before they go home for the summer to understand the changes in the recommended standards. So with that, I will pause.
Yes, Brad.
Thank you. I'd like to make some comments. First of all, I want to thank the department staff. We've met on a number of occasions, and this has been an area of concern of mine, as well as my colleague Andrea Neal. We've talked about this a number of times, and it stems out of language in House Enrolled Act 1427 that says that the board may take no further actions to implement as standards for the state or direct the department to implement any Common Core standards developed by the Common Core State, Standards Initiative, until the state board conducts a comprehensive evaluation of the Common Core standards. And so that's kind of the genesis of the concern. What we've talked about is a process, though, that will help us really make sure that we've done that. As you know, as you read 1427, in case the department does an evaluation, it's done that back in July. It talks about the Interim Education Committee, Subcommittee, and it's done that as well. In that letter that you received from Representative Baining and Senator Cruz, there were two things that that stood out to me that I've heard from constituents again and again, and it's this importance that as the board does its work, we retain Indiana's sovereignty to say this is what we believe to be best for our students. And I've heard that today in public comment. I've heard it again and again and again. The second thing is go get the best possible standards you can find. And so I want to be careful, because the reason I've also engaged in conversations that we have a diverse board. Each of us have different respective backgrounds, and mine happens to be, and my doctorate is in curriculum instructional design. And so I've had some work around this concept of evaluating standards. And so I simply bring this as a proposed suggestion. That's how I brought it to the team. I really want to see the board give direction to the process so that we can really, if we choose to exercise our sovereignty, and I hope we would, that we wouldn't ask our teachers and students to do anything that we wouldn't feel comfortable saying this is right for Indiana, that we have a process that backs that up. And so as we begin looking at the process, and I wanted to say to Superintendent Ritz, I know when the testimony was going on, you saw the need for an extended standards review. We wanted to capture some of the work already done. It was some good work. They looked at, they've asked classroom practitioners to weigh in on, for example, with regard to the current Common Core, where are the biases, where are the concerns, and around some open-ended questions. What this will help us get at, I hope, prior to public hearings is really going back and looking at those things that are cognitive, meaning what students should know, and those things that are effective, meaning what should they do. And so, again, as a suggestion, as you've seen there in the first column, by starting with NCTM and NCTE statements, it allows for a baseline for a review team to really make a true evaluation. Now, the statute says we have to look at Common Core, as I've talked with Andrea, and I don't want to speak for her, but we've talked about, we had standards already been evaluated externally and found to be the highest in the nation. Fordham, for example, gave the English a 10 out of 10. That being said, we thought, why not take a look at both while we're doing it, and that's why you see the dual track. But something I want to add to what Danielle said that I think is very important is when they reconcile, when they look at this and they're evaluating against a similar set of baseline statements of cognitive and effective norm, we also believe, and I think we talked about this too, is that if that committee looks at it and says, we don't think we have it in Common Core, we don't think we have it in the previous standards, let's not tie their hands. Let's let them go look at what's out there. They may choose to look at the standards from Massachusetts. They may choose to develop something. But the idea is that as they work through that reconciliation phase in the third column, we end up establishing our own sovereign college and career ready standards. We know they've been aligned to a set of national norms around cognitive and affective function. I've even suggested the team may want to involve Indiana Higher Ed Commission in the process, just so that as we go this route, if we need to certify off their college and career readiness, we've validated the process, and I really would submit to you it is a cogent, valid process based on best practices. But then that sets us up to walk into public hearings in March, where we're actually receiving public comment then around the actual proposed standards. So I don't know if that helps add at least a little bit in kind of merging those two things since the last time we were together, but that's the concept.
And I would, I guess, to add to that, because you brought up a good point around what has to happen at the federal level for approval of our standards because of our waiver. So all that the federal government asks for is if we are not choosing the route we are currently in, which is in our waiver, that we have a committee or a team of Indiana higher ed, college and career ready, deem our standards to be, when these students in Indiana graduate with this, they would be ready for college and or career without needing remediation. So that college and career ready panel would serve as that group for us and essentially sign off on after this body of work is done. So that would fulfill requirements from all angles. I think what we're suggesting is a multi-tiered approach that ultimately takes into consideration all stakeholders' perspectives and needs for students and for U.S. Department of Education.
You mentioned too about option 1 being shared with Speaker Boswell. I'll share, while he didn't see exactly option 2, basically I had talked to him kind of about the process, and so he kind of has in a way, and I would say I think we, the collaboration will get us to where we'd like to be, which is being in a position to adopt college and career ready standards, and hopefully by no later than the first part of April.
So with that, we do have a resolution to come before the board that was proposed at the last meeting, and now we have a process by which that will happen if there's no real objections to what was presented today or further discussion. So, Brad, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I would like to move that we approve the resolution that was submitted to our board administrator. It just simply outlines our responsibilities under 1427, and among the things it talks about in there is it discusses the need for us to complete the public hearings. It talks about the ability of the board to direct that work and basically seek input from K-12 practitioners who are already involved, as was described, as well as subject matter experts from the university, and if so needed, even going to the outside and bringing in outside national experts. It further authorizes board staff, if needed, if we have to enter into those agreements and those contracts, to do that. And you will note that in the Attorney General's advisory opinion that's perfectly allowable. We can direct our staff to do those things. And then it also basically frames out the time frame of the public hearings would be, it changes from the date you saw it last time to now having those in March through public hearings per the statute. And so that's the resolution, and I would ask for your consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion?
I'd just like to
Tony?
comment on the general concept of what Dr. Oliver was talking about, because I wouldn't want the public to go away with the idea. It was mentioned that the Indiana academic standards were evaluated and found to be the highest in the country. That has not equated into the kind of educational outcomes that I think the state wants, however. When the state of Indiana adopted Common Core in 2010, let's be clear, Indiana was 40th in the country in educational attainment. We were 41st in the country in per capita income, and I'll suggest to you there may be a correlation between those two things. We've had an ongoing worsening problem with remediation in this state that has just gotten to the point of being absolutely terrifying. We're sending about 47% of our high school graduates on to college, and in 6 years, 47% of them are not completing college. And you may think that this may just be certain school systems around the state affecting it, but it's not. If you look statewide, in 2011, before Common Core, you had, of the general diploma recipients, 83% of them had to be remediated. Core 40 diploma recipients, 41% had to be remediated. Core 40 honors diploma recipients, 7% of them had to be remediated at the college level. And we're not just talking about IU and Purdue. We're talking about Ivy Tech. We're talking about all of the state Indiana system. So we're not necessarily talking about our top tier universities. We're having kids remediated at the community college level. And it's not just, Arlington. Like Arlington High had 87% of their general diploma recipients, even 42% of their honors diploma recipients had to be remediated in 2011. But let's talk about Carmel, because Carmel is probably one of the best school districts we have in this state, quite frankly. But still, 74% of their general diploma recipients had to get remediated. 17% of their Core 40 diploma recipients had to get remediated. So there are ongoing issues here as it relates to the previous standards. And for us to just go away thinking everything was happy and rosy in this state until Common Core came along is wrong. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Brad?
Terrence, I just want to clarify before we vote too, and to my colleagues, I want to assure them, I expressed this to both the board staff yesterday and the department staff. My role yesterday was really just to provide technical assistance to the extent I have the knowledge and skills to do that. I have no aspirations of trying to even come across as though I'm trying to direct the process. It's a suggestion to you, but I share that because going forward from here, it will be up to the board staff to work with department staff if this is actually going to happen. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next item on the agenda. Sarah, you're going to need to be leaving. I think we have two things. I think we're okay? Okay. The next one is a motion to approve amended job descriptions for board staff.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just come next week. I asked that we just bring this back up again only because as we just passed the resolution, there was some information that came back from the Attorney General clarifying the extent to which board staff could operate on our behalf, particularly if we decide to go to that third option of getting some outside help. And so we felt it prudent to go back and take a look at the position descriptions passed earlier in September. I also appreciated the language there at the end that just makes it clear that the intent here is for board staff to work collaboratively with department staff.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 No. Next item is release of Attorney General opinion. I do not have a motion for that. Yes.
Again, I'd like to request a motion that we release as a board the opinion of the Attorney General related to the resolution that we just passed earlier. We've had a number of requests from that, and I've had to basically waive confidentiality and privilege on that to be able to do that, and we'd just like to be able to make that a formal motion.
Second.
I move the release of the Attorney General opinion.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We are going to take one item of discussion, and then we're going to have a lunch break. And then, well, actually, let's do this discussion, and let's do adjudications, because I believe we have people here for that. And then we'll take a short lunch break, and then come back. So we have Common Core guidance under discussion. Sarah?
Thank you for rearranging the agenda to accommodate my schedule. Also, I appreciate it. My request for this item to be on our discussion agenda has evolved over the months. I certainly appreciate the guidance that was sent out in November to schools. And in December, I feel it would be inappropriate for us to actually consider changing any of that guidance or having that conversation even at this point in the school year. Given that the board has previously voted regarding standards and assessment, it seems that a change in policy related guidance should have come first to the board. When decided and carried out by the department and not within a public board meeting, I believe that situation resulted in the confusion that was seen throughout the field. So my request in our discussion today is twofold. I'd like to better understand why board input was not considered, given the tie to our statutory responsibility on these two issues. And then I'd also like to better understand how we can avoid this type of confusion in similar situations in the future.
And from the department's perspective, the guidance documents that We were simply embarking on revising the guidance documents to adhere to the actions in 1427. And as stated earlier, the decision was made with regard to grade 2 because of the assessment delay. It really didn't have anything to do with the standards being taught in the classroom. It really was regarding the second graders being third graders and taking an assessment that was not going to be aligned solely with Common Core. And Sarah, if there's any further guidance that you'd like me to do with second grade teachers, I would be most happy to do it.
I think my concern is just making sure that if it comes down to a change on something that we voted on, I just would appreciate if it was considered in this format, just so that we can have that, again, that transparency and making sure that all parties fully understand the reasoning and why decisions are made.
Agreed.
Thank you.
May I comment?
Yes, Stan?
Later on, I want to move the meeting along, but later on, we're going to review the strategic planning process and making commitments on how strategic planning is as much about deciding where we're going to focus our energies and then where we're going to set policy and goals and standards. And that all works when everybody cooperates and follows their role and there's communication. So if we set a priority and pass something, there has to be an expectation with fidelity that we implement. And that we don't unilaterally take one role and say, we're just going to assume this. And so I appreciate the manner that you brought it up, Sarah, and I appreciate us putting this in the minutes and make it clear, because it will contribute to positive working relationships. And David's getting some feedback here. You must have someone at the door. It sounds like a doorbell. Let them in. They're delivering a Christmas gift I sent you. The clarification of this and working hard to this shared governance and following through is very, very important, not only on this item, but moving forward together. And I also heard a lot from the field. They don't want the confusion. If there's a policy, if we pass something, then they count on it. And if somebody can unilaterally change it, then what's this? And hardworking educators want this consistency. I think you've done a good service by bringing this forward, and I appreciate everybody's willingness to cooperate on it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to head to the next item on adjudications. We are at the point in the agenda where the board will conduct an adjudication to determine state tuition support withholding for IPS and Gary Community School Corporation. I'm going to recuse myself from participation in this adjudication. I therefore select Mr. Elsner for the limited purpose of serving as chair over the adjudications. And I believe you have the information that you need?
I think so. Well,
okay.
I have a script, so I'll follow it. Thank you, Superintendent Ritz. This administrative proceeding conducted pursuant to Indiana Code 20-31-9.5 through 3 to determine the amount of state tuition support to be withheld from the state tuition support that would otherwise have been distributed to the Gary Community School Corporation from January 1st to June 30th, 2014 to be used for the operation of the Turnaround Academies. The reference number for this proceeding is 12-122013. Board members received a copy of the notice of recommendation that was provided to Dr. Pruitt and her counsel on December 6, 2013. Dr. Pruitt has indicated that the corporation concurs with the recommendation. We will proceed as follows. This is an informal proceeding. A representative of the department will present the recommendation on the amount of state tuition support that should be withheld from Gary Community School Corporation, and a representative of the Gary Community School Corporation will then have the opportunity to present the school corporation's position on the recommendation. Information provided by the parties will be under oath. Both members may ask questions of the representatives. At the conclusion of the presentations and questions, board members will discuss and make a decision. The board's decision will be determined by an affirmative vote of at least 6 members. It is my understanding that Melissa Amber, did I say Amber? Ambre, thank you, Melissa, will be presenting the department's recommendation, and that Dr. Pruitt will be presenting the Gary Community School Corporation. Do either of you have any questions before we begin? No. Thank you. Okay, we have to swear you in. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the information you provide to the board during this proceeding is true and correct?
Yes.
Okay, then we have your presentation, please.
You have before you information regarding the department's recommendation to withhold from state tuition support grant funds to be distributed to Gary Community School Corporation. The department recommends withholding for the period from January 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2014 to be used for the operation of the Turnaround Academy. The estimated amount of $2,478,372.22 for Theodore Roosevelt Career Academy. This total represents basic tuition support, special education, career and technical education, and the complexity grant funding for the same period. The department's recommendation is based on the following counts for the Turnaround Academy. December 1, 2012 special education multiplied by the applicable categorical amount. The September 13, 2013 average daily membership count multiplied by the applicable amount for tuition support and complexity grants. September 13, 2013 career and technical education counts multiplied by the applicable labor market wage demand rates for career and tech ed funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions from the board? Thank you. Dr. Pruitt, do we have a...
We spoke to Dr. Pruitt and her counsel yesterday, and they concurred with those members, so they're not coming today.
Okay. Okay, so we are open now.
Withholding?
Yes, you have a second. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve the withholding.
If I could add a comment.